Right. Joining me today is the founder of MatchKit, Mike Sharman. Mike, what's your background? How did you get to a point where you founded MatchKit?
Geez, Nadya, how much time do you have? I'll give
Enough.
you I'll give you the highlights package.
Okay.
Um, I think there's been a few articles on Biz News where Alec and I have spoken in the past about Retroviral and influencer marketing and content creation. And back in 2018, I think that's a good part to start for this story. Brian Habana had retired from rugby. We were classmates. I always joke about having known him since he was a skinny scrum half. And, you know, Brian has many hidden talents that a lot of people don't necessarily know about, like starting an IT degree and then obviously the world of rugby luring him in before he could finish that. But when he was playing in France, the European teams are really good at focusing on rugby player education because they know that those careers are going to come to an end at some stage. And unlike their contemporaries, most of us only have to worry about retirement in our 60s or 70s. But for athletes, they have to worry about retirement in their 20s or 30s. So there's almost like an instant death from your first occupation. Then you have to worry, what am I going to do next? And Brian was studying, and part of his French thesis was actually focusing on life of athlete after his or her sport. And I think that if you look at a lot of the rugby players that were involved in Brian's career, so many of them really struggled to adapting to life after those absolute highs. And there's a lot of depression. We're seeing more and more mental health issues being spoken about, not just in rugby, I think because there's still a lot of stigma for men to be very macho within that space. But we're seeing it more and more from the Olympics. We're seeing it with the tennis world. And after having those insights and those understandings about the struggles of rugby players, Brian was really interested around creating these connections and these synergies based on that course that he was going through. So in 2018, we were looking at ways to create a tech product that we could analyze sport investment, sponsorships, are brands getting the best value for the things that they're investing in? And you look, if you watch an average sporting Saturday on DSTV, I mean, you'll see the brands that sponsor golf, rugby, etc. Nowadays, if you're not sponsoring Sia, are you even a brand? Every second TV commercial has him as their brand ambassador. And I think the reality with so many brands is they invest in sports that they know. If a C-suite individual loves golf, then you'll see that financial services brand throughout the Masters or the latest PGA Tour event. And what we thought was, how can we bring more insights and intel into the space? How can we bring more intelligence into that space? And there was a lot of backwards and forwards. We spoke to a few brands, and we realized that actually, as people, I myself in particular, I'm not a business plan kind of person. I'm a very gut-driven individual, and I like to create service businesses where you can start generating revenue from day one, because we know that cash flow is the number one killer for small business. So we had all the success with Retroviral as a viral agency and a branded content agency. Why don't we go and create a sister agency with Brian, with Ben Kopinski, with Shaka Sisulu, and we created a sister agency to Retroviral called Retroactive. And with Retroactive, our first campaign was for Biogen, where we took my best mate. He was grossly overweight. He was in his early 30s with a discovery vitality age of about 55 plus.
Okay.
And we got him from never having run a 5K. And we got him, he was like the little engine that could. And for 10 months, we documented his story. We partnered him with Lindsay Parry, who's a triathlon SA coach and a comrades coach. And we partnered him with a bio and a nutritionist. Hobbo lost 30 kilograms in 10 months. And he finished the Durban half Ironman. Can you believe that, Nadya?
Amazing.
And he was looking sensational. And
That's incredible.
we generated a lot of interest, a lot of PR, and Biogen actually could track that the content series generated more sales for their brand. So they wanted to be the most authentic health and wellness brand in the market. So we said, instead of working with an influencer who's going to do a spray and pray shotgun approach, we're giving you an influencer. So that was Hobbo.
I like that.
Subsequently, we worked with Kirsten Landman, and we told her story as she became the first African woman to finish Dakar on a motorbike. She even podiumed. So we've got this real love for athletes that are your fringe athletes or niche ones. They're a little bit left field, but they've got a great story, because most athletes have an awesome story. And having a partner like Brian, he really understood the importance of growing a personal brand for athletes. And so few athletes understand that, because it's not just what happens on the field, it's how you build your persona off the field. And now with social media, there's a new channel every day. Now TikTok's the flavor of the month. If you're not building your brand in these various touch points, you're losing out on so many revenue potential opportunities. If we look at the top 5 or 6 athletes in the world last year, take someone like Conor McGregor. He gets punched in the face a couple of times a year, but it's his whiskey that's generating so many sales. So fast forward to June 2020, last year, the midst of the pandemic, and we went live with a product called matchkit.co. So Matchkit is a mobile web-based application currently. We're looking at native apps for Android and iOS, but we just said, let's go to market, because athletes, for the first time in their career, all of them were stunted. All of them were put on hold. So now, for the first time, they can't be selfish and think that their heroism is never going to come to an end, because there's no games, there's training in home, you're in lockdown. Every athlete around the world was stunted in their potential growth. All of them were made to feel what it feels like to retire or to have a life-threatening injury that would prevent them from playing the sport. So going to market, a Matchkit profile is almost like a digital CV for athletes. You log in via your Instagram account, you are connected within 10 minutes, and you don't need any dev knowledge, you don't need any design knowledge. We've built it as simple as plug and play as that. And you can add a merch store, which has drop shipping associated with it. So for those who don't understand what drop shipping is, you never house the stock. The stock sits somewhere in the world, China, Eastern Europe, the States. You can have a Nadya Swart branded cap, t-shirt, or hoodie, or you could sell a video or a voice note. If you don't have a beautiful Nadya Swart 53 amazing athlete design, then our designers can design one for you, like we did for cricketer Tammy Beaumont. You're ready to plug and play and sell merch and just bring in the money. And on top of that, there's an inbox so people can contact you for commercial queries. And if you have an agent, the query will go to them. If you don't, it'll come to you. And this is the kicker. Let me tell you right now, the crowdfunding opportunity, because we believe that so many sports need to find alternative economic opportunities in this crazy new world of ours. You can't rely on sponsors commercially. And PwC released a report a few years ago that peer-to-peer influence is 70% more impactful than like influencer impact. So if Nadya goes out onto Facebook and she says, guys, listen, I'm training for the next Olympics in Paris. I'd love some. You look like you're a runner, so I reckon
I'll take that as a compliment, but no.
Marathon Paris, it's going to be a vibe. Then you can start using your crowd, because your friends and family are always going to be the ones that take pity on you first, to say, I'm so sorry, we really want to back your idea. And that's quite a roundabout story to get to the fact that we built this tech. It was go to market, it was craziness, it was a bit of international coverage and virality, focusing on rugby communities because of Brian and his credibility thereof. We converted the South American Rugby Federation. That gave us 6 different countries. It gave us Uruguay, Paraguay, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Yes. So 5 Spanish markets and a Portuguese market. And then we've been showing the data to those teams to say, it's not just about the athletes, it's about the audience that they reach. And those South Americans who've also been seen as almost like the stepchild of world rugby and don't receive the same funding that the bigger teams do, they can now go back and justify that their 150 rugby players reach 6 million people across the South American continent off the back of that data. We managed to pick up some work with the USA swimming team in the build-up to the Olympics. We had 4 of the USA women's sevens team that were on Matchkit during the Olympics. Those 4 women had 2.3 million engagements over the 2-week period that they were in Tokyo. So we've got the mixture of the smarts, we've got the values, we've got the commercial properties, and we've got the opportunity for the athletes to make money themselves. And then we met SA Hockey. SA Hockey was prohibited, inverted commas. If you search the articles, prohibited is the actual word. Even the BBC used it. That our hockey teams were prohibited from going to Rio because SASCOC just didn't feel like it. And we had no hockey representation in that Olympics. So what we did was we partnered with SA Hockey a few months ago, and we said, this is ridiculous. We are the challenger brand for the challenger brand athletes. And we helped SA Hockey by giving all of the men's team, we started off with the men because that was our focus, and we gave all of them match kit profiles. Then a lot of the women hockey players, they came on and they joined the campaign too, off the back of that. And the PR that was generated off the fact that we were helping SA Hockey crowdfund to get to the Olympics because SASCOC still hadn't confirmed 2 months out if they were going to be footing the bill for any of these events, even though they'd qualified as the top-ranked team on the African continent. Anyway, so the PR that was generated off all of that hockey engagement, it created such a PR storm that eventually, you know, when that carte blanche van rolls up and McFarlane sticks his microphone in your face.
Then you know.
Yeah. And Barry Hendricks, if you go and find that interview on the internet, Barry Hendricks sounds like the most lovable new president of SASCOC because he tells you, oh no, if you've qualified for the Olympics, SASCOC is sending you, we're paying for you, we're doing all the things. And it's a great story. It's a great PR spin because he seems like a hero that's come and the broom has swept clean all the travesties of past and day gone by at SASCOC. And that's great. But if you're just getting your ticket paid for, your accommodation paid for, and maybe a few balls and some nutrition and supplements while you're in Tokyo, what happened in the last 5 years since 2016? And that for me is the problem. There is no sustainability that's being implemented from the federations to help people nurture that talent. And if you think about our sprinters, think about Wade, think about Akani, think about the rest of that team, that 100-meter team that recently won the World Championship title. It's incredible that they do it despite the federational support. Like, you have to be running at IAAF, you have to be participating in the Diamond League. If you're a swimmer, there's a new league called the ISL. You have to be competing in a place where you're paying dollars, euros, or pounds. And we know how expensive that is for athletes. So by putting all that pressure on SASCOC, they eventually came out and said, no, we're sending a hockey team to the Olympics. And the men had an incredible run. They beat, drew, and lost to some of the best teams in the world. And for me, it gave me great excitement to see that they weren't there to just make up the numbers. They could compete. They beat Germany. They drew with the Netherlands. And then they had a couple other losses, which, I mean, there's a great effort for zero support in the last decade.
And it's still an experience for them. I mean, and you actually facilitated that.
But if you look at the caps of our hockey players versus international, we're about 3 or 4 times less in our average representations caps compared to the global scale. And if we want to compete at that level and we want to compete for medals, we need to be in constant competition. We need to be getting into those international competitions. We need the support of the public and private sector for those various athletes. And, you know, this is something, as you can see, I'm very passionate about. So when Monday, this very Monday, Women's Day Monday, the same Barry Hendricks, as we call him, because he flip-flops left, right, and center, he came out on Women's Day and said, sorry, ladies, you were the heroines of the Olympics for South Africa. No budget for you and your bonuses for medals. And then I said, hang on, let's have a look at that medal table, shall we? And the bonus table. So I put out a tweet on Women's Day saying, this is very interesting. And this is factual. There's no emotion involved in it. It's just emotive. I mean, it's just factual, no emotive. So Wade, if you compare his stats, Wade earned 500,000 Rand for his gold. He earned 150,000 Rand bonus that Minister Vagile Mbalula found at the time. And that was a 650,000 Rand bonus. Okay. Chad swimming and getting his silver in 2016, he got a 200,000 Rand bonus. So if we take Tatiana's world record, gold, silver, not even counting the fact that she broke the Olympic record in the 100-meter breast, she should be eligible based on precedence of 850,000 Rand. And Bianca, our silver surfer Beitendag, she should be eligible for 200,000 Rand off the back of that result and that experience. So that's all I did in that tweet. I laid out the facts. And you know, all the tweets have been very polite. Hey, Mr. Natim Tetwa, you're going to get out your taxpayer's checkbook. Where's the support for these women? Oh, and you're announcing from SASCOC on Monday on Women's Day. Isn't that ironic? It's Women's Day, but no bonus for the women. It sounds like a South African story in a nutshell.
So that's where the whole crowdfunding idea came in for Bianca and for Tatiana.
I think you're sorry you asked. We went down a huge rabbit hole.
No. I enjoyed it. And the passion is there. On that note, is the passion, are you a big sports fan? Or is it more like an entrepreneurial spirit that gets you going?
Am I a sportsman? Nadya, I've won more.
Sounds like it.
I've won more Castle Superfan competitions for fancy dress than any other South African.
Okay, well, that answers my
that is
question.
the answer to that question. But we are obsessed with sport. We embody what it means to be a fan. All of the people within the team, I mean, we happen to have a co-founder who's one of the greatest rugby players of all time. I'll brag for him. But for the rest of us, we fanboys, we're fanatics, and we also feel that, you know, athletes are no longer sports people. They are businesses. And it's time that they start acting like that and start building themselves and crafting that. So with matchkit.co, we help them build their personal brand first, because people have to know you. If they don't know who you are, like no one's going to come to your page to want to buy your merch or to crowdfund for you. And then after you build the brand, then you commercialize it. So when the story broke and people were tweeting me back saying, listen, this is really ridiculous. I had some friends at Easy Equity say, this is ridiculous. If you start something, we'll chuck 40 grand into the pot. So I said, love a challenge. So we took Brian's MatchKit profile. We converted his crowdfunding page into a dedication to the Olympians. We then put in the URL at the start from that quoted piece from EWN. And this was 9:00 on Tuesday morning. My phone hasn't stopped ringing for the last 48 hours. It's been unbelievable. I mean, we raised 100,000 Rand in the first hour. And then 24 hours later, we hit a 300,000 Rand. At the moment, we're probably on about getting close to 330. The momentum's starting to decline a little bit now, but I think it's safe to say we'll probably go close to 340, 350,000 Rand from a whole bunch of small businesses, private individuals, and people that just have seen a few interviews from around the world and said, we're gonna club in. And I mean, the amount of flip-flopping continues from the powers that...
That's what I wanted to ask, because I mean, now they've said that they will be paying incentives. So has that changed your plan at all, or are you still going to continue with the crowdfunding?
It's very easy to say there'll be incentives after the fact. And we have to wait for the Paralympians to finish in September. We don't know what those figures are. If you had a plan, if you had any form of foresight, this would have been part of the budget. It would have been stipulated up front. One of my favorite comments from the ministry/SASCOC, we didn't want the athletes to be distracted by money talk by offering a figure for the bonuses before they left for Tokyo. Have you ever heard such a ridiculous comment?
Probably not in this regard, no.
And if you want to treat athletes and sport like a business, because it's ultimately the most galvanizing thing that we have as a nation and other parts of the world have, surely, I mean, you in your job, you have KPIs. You have to do a certain amount of interviews. You have to have a certain level of quality. If you achieve that, you get your salary. And if you overachieve that, hopefully Alec gives you a bonus. If he doesn't, I'll have a word with him. I'll send out a tweet.
Don't worry, I'm very well taken care of.
And then in the sporting world, what's the difference? You should say to Akani, if you go and win a medal in the 100 meters, you get a bonus. And this is what the bonus is. It's stipulated. That's what most of the countries out there have done. The Philippines have been giving $800,000 for gold medal
to their own medalists.
Yeah, I don't think the Philippines got any gold medals, but I mean that's a great, you incentivize.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't think of a situation where incentivizing actually sort of, does the opposite.
No. Oh no, there's an incentive. I'm going to run slower.
Yeah.
Tatiana, you can earn 850,000 Rand if you break a world record, and if you get a silver, and if you get a gold. Nah, I'm chilled. I'll take the bronze. Thanks.
So, okay. You guys are on about 300 and something now. Are you going to split that equally, or sort of in ratio to how much they would have earned had they been paid like the medalists in 2016?
This has been the team debate. And I think that the reality is that you have to split it according to the results and the success thereof. Otherwise, we're just subscribing to a mediocre kind of culture where everyone gets a medal for participating. The reality is that Tatiana did better, Bianca did less well compared to her. So that should be split according to the results and the achievements. The 2 medals versus the 1 medal, the world record versus the no world record, like all that kind of stuff, like that has to come into play. I've had some smart actuary types giving me their views on Twitter. I've opened things up to the crowd again and saying, what do you guys want to do with this? And that seems to be the most agreed upon consensus. Take the full amount, split it accordingly to Tatiana in Tatiana's favor, and then Bianca in a smaller split, and then also upweight the fact that Tatiana broke a world record.
That is amazing. Yes, and we really needed that little bit of good news. So you mentioned the Paralympics. Does this not like maybe set a little bit of a difficult precedent to maintain? So what about the Paralympics? Are you going to then also do crowdfunding?
It must be a difficult precedent to maintain. And I think that's it. We have to continue to put pressure on our public servants who are neither very public nor servant-like. And I think
but don't you think this maybe takes the pressure off of them?
No, it puts it on them more, because if they aren't raising any money for the athletes, it puts egg on their face. It's exactly the situation with SA Hockey. They weren't going to send SA Hockey again, possibly. And all that media storm made it a lot easier for them to say, oh, of course we're sending them. Because ultimately you want to look like, oh, we were always raising this bonus for them. And I think that's ultimately what it is. So the cynical journalistic question there is, oh no, you're letting a public servant get off scot-free. But I think we're putting the microscope on them further, because every time anyone has an interview with Nati or with Barry, they're going to be like, where's the bonuses? Where's the money coming from? What about that 15 million rand deal you did with Planet Fitness, which we know is all BS and PR spin? There was no 15 million rands worth of cash. It was 15 million rands worth of checking in and out of a Planet Fitness. And those are the kinds of deals that the SASCOC commercial arm are doing. 15 million rand in value. I mean, how many times do you visit the gym? How many points do you get for 15 million rand worth of visits?
As many as I need to. Yes, 15 million. All right. So, but given that this campaign, it's amazing. It's shown how South Africans really we stand together. It's incredible. We're actually a very generous group of people. Has it made you think of any other causes that you guys can use this crowdfunding for?
Yeah, you asked about the Paralympians. The reason why we built our tech as simply and as easy to create as possible, anybody can crowdfund. So we've spoken to 1 or 2 of the Paralympian potentials. We've spoken to a few of their coaches. And the reality is that here's a tech play that anybody can log on, they can create a match kit, and they can create a crowdfund. So we want people to take the learnings from this specific case study and apply it to their own community, to their own friends and family, to their own brands that they're working with, because this isn't a once-off solve. This is a replicatable business. It's a repeat, rinse, do it again. And that's the starting point. I think the second thing is we want to look forward to Paris 24, which is only 3 years now because of that last year. And we want to look at building ways, sustainable ways. So any of the corporates that are listening, we want to build a fund that is separate and not managed by SASCOC and is fully transparent and accountable from our side. And we want to invest in people that are medal potentials. We've already started identifying 1 or 2 that we're starting to have meetings with, but we want to support athletes in their 3-year journey so that when they get the medal, I get the goosies. Then we know that we've been involved in a sustainable solution. And it's not this one PR spin that gets a few hits and gets a few retweets. We're not about that life. We're about making better, smarter commercial decisions for people that don't necessarily have the financial acumen. And we don't want them to be bankrupt after their gold medal. We want them to be able to be inspired, to inspire a young generation of South Africans. We've seen what Tokyo 2019 did with the most diverse and transformed rugby team in our history. We've seen now with the men's hockey team. Hockey is always seen as a Cinderella sport, but look at that team. It is the most organically transformed because there've been no pressures from a quota perspective. And there are Muslim kids from Cape Town that, had never been overseas. There were black kids from townships that are now playing like amongst affluent white dudes. Like there's a full, proper Rainbow Nation story that exists within hockey that people aren't telling, which we are excited to pioneer that storytelling with.
And is this, did you ever consider maybe going into other skills apart from sport? Like what if you have aspiring musicians or artists or something like that, maybe ways to invest in them?
The joke is always when we launch this, the music version of this, we're going to call it drum kit. But
I like it.
Exactly to your point, there's so many niche pockets in various different interests. So you talk about music, but think about how invested Afrikaans music is in particular. Just in South Africa, you've got like amapiano, and you've got all these other like genres that are popping out across the country and across the continent. And I think for me, as a guy who loves to create businesses and loves to innovate, you can't go too broad too quickly. You have to get the niche right. And once you've got that, like, this is white labelable and possible to replicate into creative, into entrepreneurship, into music. But then we're going to get distracted because, I mean, there's so many people that need support across all these various verticals and horizontals. But for right now, the focus is on sport. But yeah, in the future, maybe we take on LinkedIn. Who knows?
That's amazing. Well, thank you. I mean, you've given the people something happy for a change. We've had a rough couple of months. Oh, yes, a couple of years.
Oh,
so this is a great story to actually report on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for your time.
Awesome.